I don't necessarily think about myself as an entrepreneur. And I don't know if that's a, woman thing or a sort of an age thing, but I always thought that entrepreneurs were like the Steve Jobs or the Elon Musks, or in Australia, the Aussie John Simon, those sorts of people were the entrepreneurs.
Welcome to Hacking Health. This podcast is for future-focused health experts, thought leaders and change makers who are interested in making health accessible for everyone, because together we can get to the future faster. Are you a morning person or a night owl, and how does your natural rhythm influence your daily routine?
Well, it's a very interesting question because I used to think I was a night owl, and I am to a certain degree. I think my natural instinct is to stay up late. However, the last sort of period of time since I've had my own business, I find getting up in the morning before everyone's up helps me get through some work. And so I don't know if I've always had it or I've retrained myself, but I find now that morning period is more productive. So I've restructured my whole diary to allow myself to use the morning to do deep work, which is when I need to get the really difficult stuff done. And then I have meetings in the afternoon. So that switch has been really effective. My productivity.
Really interesting, because I do it the opposite way.
Well, I did originally do it the opposite way because I had more energy in the morning. I thought I'll use it to. But doing conversations like this, because I'm extroverted, it actually gives me energy.
It's easier for you to do it in the afternoon.
Yeah. Yeah. I get it done.
I have to switch my calendar around to try it out.
Yeah, it worked well. I literally block it out.
Yeah.
It's deep work. 9 till 12 in my diary. So yeah.
I love that. If you could have any superpower, what would it be and why?
I think my superpower, would be teleportation, because I feel like I always want to be in 50 places at once because there's just so many amazing things happening in the world at any given time. And I realize the more life goes on that I am one tiny minuscule speck in the world. So I would like to be able to be in multiple places at once, which I know isn't technically teleportation, but I could get there fast.
Well, you could just transport yourself fairly quickly between places rather than being in multiple places once if you could teleport. So I think it's a great one.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Forward from in the back. Be cool.
What experiences or moments shaped your path to becoming an entrepreneur?
That is an easier one to explain. So I had 20 years in large corporates. So I used to run retail networks, call centers, and large-scale transformation, which I absolutely loved. I loved helping organizations better serve their customers, helping to develop people. But I burnt out, unfortunately, in 2016, unexpectedly, because I missed all the warning signs. So I stepped out. I was single parenting, walked my kids to and from school, and thought, surely in this day and age with technology, we can fix this, we can address this. And so that led me to start Pioneera, which now 6 years later, we've built an AI platform to do exactly that, prevent burnout in real time.
It's so awesome. Is there any more of your journey to entrepreneurship that you would like to share? Like, what inspired you to start your own business? But I think you just explained that.
Yeah, I think that it's so funny because I don't necessarily think about myself as an entrepreneur. And I don't know if that's a, woman thing or a sort of an age thing, but I always thought that entrepreneurs were like the Steve Jobs or the Elon Musks, or in Australia, the Aussie John Simon, those sorts of people were the entrepreneurs, or, Mike and Scott who run Atlassian. I didn't think about myself as an entrepreneur. But I did feel very strongly about addressing this problem, and so strongly that I knew business and I thought business was the way of actually solving this problem. So it kind of felt like the natural step for me to take to start the business. And it's only when people later started calling me an entrepreneur that I was like, oh, really? And I'm still not sure, to be honest, but that it led me to use business to solve a problem, which I guess is the heart of many entrepreneurs' journey.
Yeah, that is the heart of entrepreneurship. So look, tick, that's what you are. And also in an area that is just exploding at the moment. So Pioneera uses AI and machine learning to analyze workplace behaviour. How do you address concerns about privacy and ethical considerations in your
It's an excellent
business?
question. And because you have to be aware, not all AI products are concerned about privacy at all, in its lightest, in fact. So before we started Pioneera, before I started building any product, I did a lot of research. So I delved into the academic research, but I spoke to potential customers and I spoke to users because we're a business product. So the people that buy the product, the CEOs, the heads of HR aren't necessarily the users of the product who'd be the employees. So I did both, lots of research. And it was really, really clear from employees, every single conversation that I had, regardless of organizational size or industry, was that privacy was critical. Mm-hmm. They did not want their bosses to know that they were stressed. They did not want HR to know that they were stressed because they felt that there would be some sort of consequence. Mm-hmm. I would be discriminated against. I'll be held back from a project. I won't get the opportunities. So very clearly from day one, we made a decision that all individual data is private and confidential to that individual. So I get my information from Coach Indy, mm-hmm. but my manager can only ever see aggregated, anonymized mm-hmm. data in groups of 5 and above. And there's no way that they can identify me and target me. So that was the first decision that we took, which turned out to be an incredibly positive decision because it's one of the differentiators now that we can guarantee privacy and confidentiality. Second thing we do is that ANZ was one of our very early lighthouse clients. Apparently it's called a lighthouse customer. I didn't know that term till recently. And they tested the first iterations of the product. And then they worked with us to design and build a product that they could use at the bank. So it needed to meet all of the cybersecurity and risk requirements. So that meant that the back end, so the infrastructure of the product is built in a safe, scalable way. And also the user experience of the product is safe and reliable and builds trust. So that's the way that we've dealt with that and has proved to be very successful.
So the ethical side as well is something that people are talking a lot about with AI, but it sounds like that sort of covers the privacy elements, cover ethical considerations as well.
There's one that privacy is part of the ethical AI. So a crash course for people looking at ethical and responsible AI. There's a number of things you want to consider. So privacy is really important, but things like transparency, dealing with bias, causing no harm. There's a number of ethical principles. And back in 2018, when we started Pioneera, Data 61, which is part of the CSIRO, had ethical AI guidelines that they'd published. So we went and found them. There was no requirement, like there was no, legal need to do so, but we wanted to do the right thing because we would genuinely try and continue to genuinely try and help people and companies. We went and found those guidelines and we made them kind of the framework within which we developed our AI. And now they've become the framework that Australia uses, and globally we're seeing regulations around use of AI. So what's coming out of Europe specifically is that you can't actually use someone's data without their permission. So we had already had it private and confidential for our system, and about a year and a half ago, before the EU made this move, we introduced consent, which means an employee must consent to use the AI. So I think it's really important if anyone listening to this is considering AI, not all AI is created equal.
Yes.
Not all AI will be ethical and responsible, regardless of what people tell you. And I know that because we're building it. And I know the decisions we've had to make to keep it ethical and responsible. So just Google, responsible AI practices, Google CSIRO, you'll find there's sort of 8 or 9 principles, and just make sure in any vendor you're asking those questions.
So asking the specific questions.
Specific questions. How do you deal with bias? How is it transparent? How do you make sure that you're doing no harm? They're the sorts of things that you want to be asking.
Yeah,
and if we can't explain to you how the AI is making a decision, then that's not transparent, and that's probably what you want to stay away from.
Wow, that's so practical and helpful. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Can you share some insights into how technology can be leveraged to foster better employee well-being and productivity? So this is like a health-focused podcast, and so this fits in perfectly your business with the topic, because it really is about making sure you have a healthy workforce for the long term, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so that's why I was very excited to come on here.
I know.
So I fundamentally believe, and we do at Pioneer, and a lot of people we talk to, that the differentiator in organizations is its people, right? You can have technology, you can have processes, all that sort of stuff. But at the end of the day, the people do the work. Even if we have bots that are serving customers, there are people that are developing those bots. So our philosophy was always, how can we augment the person? How can we help individuals and managers do their best job? How can we help them be safe and productive and successful at the same time? So we use the technology to do that. We're not trying to replace anyone. We're actually trying to help people. And I think, that design philosophy has been helpful because it allows us to make decisions to say, well, does this help someone or not? Like really simple. And because we have a lot of workplace expertise, like, as I said, I was leading teams for 20 years. We know how companies work. We know how management works. We know how challenging it is for managers. So the technology allows us to understand what's going on with people in real time in a private and safe way, but actually tailor what's helpful for them, because it's impossible to do that. But, even 50 people in a company, you can't have a CEO tailor solutions to 50 or 10 people.
Yeah.
But as you get company of 100, company of 1,000, a company of 50,000, it's impossible to scale that level of personalization. So the technology allows you to do that if you do it in a safe way. And that's been the approach that we've taken, and why I think technology is so powerful.
Yeah. Wow. I love this conversation. It's so good. So exciting. In your experience, what are some common misconceptions or myths about health and well-being that you've encountered, and how do you debunk them?
Yeah, I think, oh my God, so many. First one is that everyone thinks they're totally fine. So I can't tell you how many times we go into organizations and they're like, no, I'm fine. I don't need anything. I'm not stressed. I'm all good. And I'm in a conversation for about 5 minutes. And I'm like, well, you could do with a little support. Doesn't mean you're failing, but there's a little support here. So that's kind of the first thing that I would say, is acknowledging that we're all people and all of us need some level of support. So when we talk about wellbeing support, it doesn't mean that your wellbeing will be struggling for you to can get some support to improve your wellbeing. So that's the first thing. You don't have to have a problem to get help. We can all use help. The second thing is, I think the view of organizations is that one size fits all. So we often see companies rolling out programs that include free gym memberships or patient sessions and stuff like that. There's a lot of focus on physical health, but they don't often ask their employees what they're looking for and what they need. So we put in quite expensive wellbeing programs, in fact, when we know actually what improves wellbeing and productivity are the work practices that sit around the employee and around the team. And by work practices, we're talking about, well, what's the design of the job and how does the team communicate, and what's the workload of that individual? What's the management, what's the leadership capability like? What type of leader is that person? That has a fundamentally stronger impact on wellbeing and mental health than a million amount of wellness programs. So that's the thing I'd kind of debunk. And the third thing that I would debunk is that you can't use technology to help wellbeing, and it's super difficult. Of course, I would say, because we built the technology, you can use technology and it's not super difficult, but they're kind of the main things that we see.
What trends do you see shaping the future of work, and how can individuals and organisations prepare themselves to thrive in this evolving landscape?
I think there are some really interesting things happening socially at the moment. So if we think about the cost of living, because it's really the top of mind thing, everyone we speak to is talking about cost of living. So I think that's got to come at the top. And it's not just in Australia. We're seeing the pressure globally for cost. So I think in a high pressure cost of living environment, the need to do well at work, because some people are worried they'll lose their job if they don't do well, coupled with the financial pressure, creates a different environment than what we've been used to. So I think that's a new thing. The financial pressure is coming right to the top of the list of concerns, which then puts more pressure on wellbeing and mental health. So I think that, those two kind of overlap. And someone asked me this morning, we don't know the impact of long-term financial pressure on people's mental state. And I said, well, I think we do. It's like that's what chronic stress does to someone. You end up burning out. So I think that's something that we need to be very well aware of. And the second thing I think is that the trend is around technology is just accelerating. So ChatGPT coming into the market in November of 2022 has opened the possibilities of what technology is. And
made people more aware of what AI is, so it makes your conversations easier.
It does. Yeah, actually, it's been amazing. People are welcoming it in. Before they thought we were the Terminator. They'd be like,
now it's a bit more relatable maybe.
Now it's a bit more relatable, totally, and it's safer and people can see how they can use it. So I think they're two massive trends that are shaping well-being and shaping workplaces and shaping the future of work. And then the third one I would say, which was number one until the last month, is really about hybrid and remote working. So post the pandemic, people have very different ways of working now than we did pre-pandemic. And most organizations have implemented hybrid working.
Yes.
But that's new and that's hard. And leaders that were already overworked and overwhelmed don't necessarily know how to lead in a hybrid world. So that's something that organizations are grappling with. And I think are spending quite a bit of time trying to deal with.
Another question I have in relation to this is I facilitate for the Australian Institute of Company Directors, and I did a facilitation last week on Risk and Strategy Day, and we look at future risks. And someone actually mentioned that they think, at the moment we're in quite an employee-constrained environment. And as in there's not quite enough employees to be able to do all the work we need, so low unemployment rate. They think that is going to continue well into the future and that employers will continue to have trouble finding the right people to do the roles. Do you have any thoughts on that, or does that make technology like yours even more important to keep people in their roles?
It's a really good question. I don't know, because we had the Great Resignation and then we had quiet quitting, and quiet quitting seems to be continuing. So I'm not 100% sure. I do know, though, that retaining employees, if we go back to cost of living and, economic impact on organizations, to replace an employee is like something like 400% of their annual salary. So it's a huge cost to organizations to replace an employee. So it is important and has become more important. But the other thing I'm noticing is there's specific industries, particularly very highly skilled technical industries, and, accounting would be a really good example, claims managers, very technical skills, that if you lose a person, like if someone leaves your organization, very, very hard to replace, because, I call it about it's a shallow talent pool. There's not that many people in that particular talent pool. It's different if you're looking at like an engineer, for example, like a full stack engineer, where there's lots of people, but where you have very highly technical areas that take a long time to come up to speed, like, the learning curve's 12 months before you get to some level of compliance, then they're the industries that are very, very focused on retaining their people, reducing risk if you're talking to risk people, because it's a massive risk when you bring new people in. So that's what.
Fascinating, all this stuff.
It is. Yeah, it is.
All right. This is more a healthcare question, so I'm hoping that you can answer it, but if not, that's fine. What do you envision as the future of healthcare accessibility, and what steps can we take now to move towards a more equitable and inclusive healthcare system?
I think it's critical for our future as a country and for us globally to provide equitable access to health, because that's really the biggest challenge, is how can you afford to access health regardless of where you are. So I think access, and technology actually makes access to healthcare so much more accessible. Access to health, blah. But you know what I mean. You're able to access specializations, regional areas with telehealth and stuff like that far more easily than you ever could. So I think that's a huge thing. And technology allows robotics. I heard the other day about someone can be sitting in New York and they can use a robot here in Australia to operate on someone.
Whoa.
So yeah, it's extraordinary what technology is allowing us to do. So accessibility is one thing, not just geographical accessibility, but financial accessibility, because often you're only able to get good quality healthcare if you can afford it. And let's face it, most of the world can't afford that good quality healthcare. So I think accessibility is kind of super critical, and the ability to provide that. But then I think the second thing is, and we talk a lot about this, is about prevention. So healthcare seems to be a lot about someone is sick, get to the doctor, get to the specialist, whatever that is, right? You're dealing with a crisis situation. Whereas the future of healthcare, I believe, needs to be about prevention. How can you create an individual or a lifestyle that prevents issues or diseases or whatever it is from happening? You can't always prevent it. Like, it's not always going to be the case. But we do know that prevention is more effective than cure in some instances. And there will be ways that you can prevent the escalation into some illnesses. And this is the really strong focus that we have at Pioneera. We're trying to prevent the escalation of mental health issues at work. And if you can triage someone early, and if you can get them into the right sort of support early, then you're going to stop that escalation into the healthcare system, which puts more pressure on the healthcare system, which then doesn't allow it to deal with other cases that might be more relevant for the healthcare system. It also rules out, like, if you're working in a remote and regional area and you need specialist support, you can't get that always. So we're trying to prevent that. So I think that technology for accessibility and inclusiveness, as well as prevention, will be the future. I hope that'll be the future of healthcare.
It's interesting. It's a bit like legal support in a way that, like, we never really get celebrated for stopping the fire from even getting to the house. Yeah. So it can be it's like more of an insurance kind of policy, isn't it? Where you can see the impact if somebody goes down from burnout or stress or kind of can't function properly at work. But if you are putting things in place that prevent that, I guess that they can look at metrics. Bigger organizations will have much better ability to reflect on the impact that a software or service like yours provides. But yeah, it just made me think of the difficulty that we have, we try and stop disputes happening, but people only really know what it's like to have a dispute if they have one.
Yeah, that's right.
To know that they want to stop them.
That's been the biggest issue, actually. You can't, because people can't relate to it. Coming back to can you relate? You can't relate to the dispute unless you've been through a dispute.
Yeah.
So I think and maybe certainly what I'm reading about the legal industry is that a lot of the profit comes from billable hours.
Yes.
So you want to be able to help someone through that. You're not actually getting rewarded. You're not getting revenue for the prevention.
Yes.
But I think shifts more towards IP.
Yes.
And you're actually getting paid for your IP rather than for your billable hours.
Yes.
I think we'll start to see some of that flow through.
Yeah.
And from an organizational perspective, they absolutely have skin in the game in prevention, because not only does it reduce turnover costs, it improves productivity, but really tangibly, it reduces insurance premium. Because if you've got people going from workers' comp leave, then that's going to affect your insurance premium the next year. The only thing we've seen is that's often a hidden cost. When you're looking at your line items, it's often it's not that clear what the insurance premium is. And for large organizations, obviously, it's significant. But we're seeing benefits in small customers. One of our customers are a 5-person HR consulting firm. And we've just been working with them for the last 6 months. And they've seen their flow state go up by 12%
Incredible.
in the last 6 months working with us. Yeah, so you don't have to be big to get benefit.
You can
from
see
technology.
the KPIs changing as well. So that helps motivate.
That's right. And we were able to pick up things that the CEO hadn't seen because she's busy. And small businesses actually love technology because it's a really simple way of implementing solutions. And let's face it, most small business owners have not started their business to lead people.
Yes.
They started their business to solve a problem or to provide a service, and leading people is one of the things they have to do. So giving them some support in a really simple, effective, like cost-effective way to do that is helpful for SMEs.
I love it. Is there anything that I haven't asked you that I should have?
I don't think so. Maybe how I manage my own health and well-being, maybe.
Well, yeah, that's a good one, especially post the dramatic kind of burnout experience you talked about.
I think I say that because people kind of ask me that all the time now. And I would say two things to that, which is what I always say is that I'm a work in progress. So I do learn from my experiences. I won't say mistakes because it was a great learning experience. So, but I'm a work in progress. So I've now got a much greater sense of the warning signs for me. So you might wonder, why do I have my cup of tea here and why do I have my glass of water? Because I see the warning signs. So when I'm getting headaches or when I'm getting sore eyes, I'm like, okay, what do I need to do to, rather than just barrel on through that, which I previously would have, I'm like, well, what do I need to do just to take a minute? So, and I use our software. So our software pops up and tells me when it's time for a break, which is really good.
That's really good.
Yeah, which is really handy. It's good to know it works.
Yes.
The other thing is, I think, the reason I asked that question is because I talk openly about it now, because coming back to one of the first comments I made, people don't really think they need to focus on their health and well-being, or they think they're fine, or maybe they're a bit ashamed because, they realize that they're human and they're fallible, but we all have to look after ourselves. And so I'm happy to share that, looking out for when I get a headache, looking out for the amount of hours that I'm doing is a really clear indicator. If I'm doing way too many hours, I pull back, not overfilling my diary or not overcommitting. Not technically like meditation or anything, but, if I come back to job demands and job design as one of the key drivers for, psychological safety at work, if I overcommit, guaranteed it's not going to be kind of a good outcome for me. So even with my team today, I said, no, I can't review that today, but I will absolutely review that for you tomorrow because I need to finish this today. So please send it to me tomorrow and I'll review it tomorrow. Simple things, but I have found that's made a huge difference.
Great. Managing expectations, isn't it?
Expectations. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Or what about me? Okay. Actually, I, for Christmas, got this Aura ring thing.
Oh, yes. I've heard of them.
And I found it so useful. I mean, I'm still kind of getting used to all the data and everything, but yeah, I found it really useful in terms of knowing when I should take a break. It says I don't take anywhere near enough breaks during the day, so I have quite a high stress load and I don't take a break. But there are some things about it that are not perfect because at lunchtime my team and I go for a walk. So we do have a break, but that, I think my body thinks that's a fairly high stress break because it's kind of physical and out and about. So I think it's still learning this technology.
Yeah.
But it's been fascinating to see the insights, and also I'm not always great at listening to my body, but if I have like a low readiness score for the day, maybe I won't go to the gym. I'll do something else, go for a walk, or like I'll listen to it as a view to preventing getting sick is what I just want to avoid going down. So if I need to take a lighter day, then I will.
Yeah, that's so interesting. So I've heard of the Aura ring. Someone else mentioned it to me actually a couple of months ago. We were tossing up whether or not we'd try it. But you identify one of the key reasons why we use language versus biometrics. So biometrics are not always reliable indicators of our stress state, whereas language is fairly reliable. So it's a pretty reliable indicator of how someone's doing. But I think what it does, your experience is very similar to what our customers say. Having that just raises it to your awareness, right? You're now aware of what are the things I need to do and how do I proactively do that? So super healthy. Yeah, great decision. Good for you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for coming in today. It's been so fun.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
We're going to keep the conversation going in our private Facebook group, You Legal for Doctors. You're welcome to join us there.